Happy Wednesday, ladies and gentlemen, March 12th, and it's the official day of free agency in the NFL. Welcome to the Love of the Star podcast. I'm Eric Chiafalo of the G-Bag Nation, 105.3 The Fan, and I'm with the Super Bowl winning scout, Brian Broaddus, ready to break it down as we are now. It's the first technical day of free agency, but we've seen deals over the last 3 days. The Cowboys have actually made a couple themselves. So let's go ahead and dive into some of this stuff, and then of course we'll get into your mailbag questions coming up here before we close things down. But Broaddus, happy Wednesday to you, my friend. We've now got some signings. The Cowboys making a couple of moves. How you feeling?
You know, Eric, I mean, you never feel great this time of year. I mean, I'm trying to go back to the days when I was in pro personnel and we didn't have the tampering period. I don't ever remember. I remember having meetings with Jerry and Steven and like Bill Parcells and then there was there was free agency period. We'd go to the combine and there'd be a lot of talk. So it's kind of like this tampering period kind of takes away a little of the juice of free agency. Am I right about that with some of the signings right out of the gate? Or, I know they become official today, and then you could officially, today is the first day of the league year, so the trades and all the things that you want to do. But this tampering period's got me kind of weird because I was so used to being, okay, free agency starts now. And then you have the flurry of signings. I'll always remember Jacksonville in the 90s and then into the 2000s was always a team that seemed like they had 5 guys done when free agency started. Now they were tampering way before everybody else was tampering, but it seems like there's maybe a little luster off this signing period because we've seen a lot of signings already. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. The build up is less so because we had Sunday a few days ago on Sunday.
Right.
It was we're getting peppered with re-signings.
Sure.
And you have trades that are being made that don't become official until today. So yeah, it is a little bit weird, and I wonder if what's the real reason for having the two separate, the tampering beginning and then the official start. It always made more sense.
It's weird.
Yeah,
it's really weird for me. And listen, I haven't been in a pro personnel department since 2005. I'm just kind of a back in the day guy. You would meet, you would put your board together at the combine. You might have a little interaction with some agents, kind of get an idea where this thing was going. And then when it was 12:01, boom, that's when the flurry, the Sunday flurry, the Monday flurry, the Tuesday flurry. This seems very anticlimactic now for me, because I feel like that we've seen a lot of major deals go down the pipe. The Cowboys trying to kind of fill some holes. Little disappointed that they've lost out on some of these linebackers. But Eric, these linebackers were going back to their teams. They were signing back. You kind of felt like that. Man, this linebacking crew, maybe you could grab one or two of these guys and help your team that way. But we saw these guys start to re-sign with their teams, and I was thinking oh damn, the pro department's now caught up with the college department. The college department's telling the pro guys, hey, there ain't a lot of linebackers. I talked to a team the other day that told me that they've got 2 linebackers in the top 75 on their draft board. So that tells you a lot right there, that these teams were kind of looking at, and I'm just looking at it from a Dallas Cowboys perspective. I was thinking man, maybe Dallas can go in there and grab one of these guys. It just hasn't materialized as we've seen so far.
Yeah, and I honestly, looking at the deals that those guys got with their teams to re-sign, I don't think the Cowboys would have even been.
No, you're right. You're right.
Swimming in those waters.
Yeah.
We do know that on the first day on Monday, the two biggest names that they were rumored to be interested in were Charvarius Ward, corner of the Niners, who ends up signing a pretty good sized deal with the Colts. And then also former Niners linebacker Dre Greenlaw was a guy that didn't re-sign with his team. He hits the market. Cowboys were definitely interested. It seemed like there were probably 4 or 5 teams with legitimate interest in him. But we know the Cowboys are never going to be the highest bidder. So they swing and miss.
Unless it's their own guy. Unless it's their own guy, then they become the highest bidder. Right?
Yeah, good call. Good call. They'll wait to the end. Yeah. They'll let the market go up on their own guy, and then they'll sign him to a market-setting deal. But when it comes to outside free agents, we know the Cowboys don't do that, and it's really frustrating. We know, and we thought maybe with putting together now back-to-back poor drafts for a Cowboys standard.
Very true. Very true.
Maybe with the amount of holes that they have, you have the new vision with the new coaching staff. Maybe they would stretch themselves a little bit more than we've become accustomed to over the last decade plus with the Cowboys in free agency. And unfortunately, that is just not unfolded. So it's not a surprise, but it's certainly still disappointing with the way the Cowboys go about things. The Dre Greenlaw signing would have been huge for them. And it was a palatable deal. It wasn't like he got astronomical numbers. And so the fact that they weren't even able to come correct on a guy like that it just adds to the frustration. And the linebacker is now a huge spot that we're going to be looking at. And I think the draft has some guys, but they're later in the draft. There's not a bunch of second round guys that you're like, oh my gosh, these are no brainer dudes. So it's definitely frustrating from that standpoint. I did want to address the Osa deal. I know we've talked about it plenty, but putting it into perspective now, seeing a guy like Milton Williams, it was kind of Osa and Milton Williams as the two younger top of the tier defensive tackle free agents, and Osa signs for $20 million a year with the Cowboys, and Milton Williams ends up getting a deal with the Patriots for $26 million per year. So just to emphasize the win on that contract, I liked Milton Williams, the player, a little bit better than Osa. But when you look at a $6 million per year difference on those two contracts, that is just it reinforces how much of a home run deal that was. And thank God Osa just wanted to be a Cowboy. Like he knew he was leaving $4 or $5 or $6 million per year on the table. But he wanted to be a Cowboy, and so the Cowboys were able to take advantage of that.
Eric, I'm going to ask you this question, and you've got a really good working knowledge of the National Football League. Would you take right now Osa and Solomon Thomas, or just Milton Williams?
With the way the Cowboys do it, Broadus, I would do the Osa and Solomon Thomas.
See, that's what I'm saying. I look at it as by what you saved on the deal with Osa, you basically got Solomon Thomas is what you did. So, with the savings that the $6 million, I know that Solomon Thomas, it's a $4 million deal, but just, work with me here on this. You were able to buy that savings, or even you were able to, maybe the guard you picked up. You got to kind of look at where the savings. I mean, I know personally, I am very, very critical of what the Cowboys do in free agency and stuff. I do have to give them their props for the Osa deal and getting that done. I think you did a very nice job of kind of talking about that. But I also look at this as like, okay, you got Osa and you got Solomon Thomas, who I know we'll get into. I watched Solomon Thomas's tape. Coach White Cotton, who's now the Cowboys defensive line coach, had him at the Jets, got him playing at a really nice level. So if you tell me I could have my starting 3 technique and a quality backup to him for basically what Milton Williams went for to New England, I think I'm kind of like, okay, team building there worked. Team building is so. I got to give them credit for that. I'm critical a lot, but this one might play out very, very well for them at the end of the day.
Well, and I think part of it too is just understanding how the Cowboys do business and knowing that they are going to that they allow the salary cap to really restrain them, and
They
so
do.
they would never give 26 million to Milton Williams and then still do a bunch of other deals.
Right.
So with the way they do it, yes. I mean, I would love for them to be ultra aggressive and just say, we don't care. We're going to spend more money on the better player, and we're also going to get a backup to him, and we're gonna fill our roster the way the Eagles have done. But the Cowboys don't do that. So based on that, yes, I think ultimately this ends up being a win for the Cowboys, Osa, and then Solomon Thomas. And so we'll talk about Solomon Thomas here in a moment, but I just kind of wanted to go chronologically. You get the Osa deal done, and then really on the first day of the tampering, we find out that Jordan Lewis is now going to be the highest paid nickel corner in NFL history, and it's not going to be with the Cowboys. It's going to be with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So that was one of the first moves where the Cowboys were unable to retain Jordan Lewis. I know they wanted to retain him, but we know the Cowboys were not going to pay him the type of money that the Jags were willing to pay. So you lose Jordan Lewis in the first few minutes of Monday, and that's a big blow, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And Jordan Lewis on a defense that struggled really the first quarter of the season, got better as they got through the halfway point of the season, playing better at the end. The Jordan Lewis was a big part. Even when things were going poorly the first 5 weeks of the season, Jordan Lewis was the one guy that was consistently holding things together. Yes, they gave up some huge plays. Yes, they gave up some big time points in some games. But when you studied the tape, Jordan Lewis could sit in that film room with his teammates and watch his play on that screen and not feel any bit of sadness. Yes, feel sadness that they lost, but the way he played, not one of his teammates or coaches could have looked at his effort or the way he played and thought, wow, well, Jordan wasn't very good today. It was, I didn't see Jacksonville being that team. I really thought the Commanders with their nickel situation wasn't great last year. And so I thought maybe that the Commanders would be that team. Maybe they were. They just couldn't match the $10 million that Jacksonville was able to put out there. But yeah, it is a big loss. And Jordan Lewis, you got to give him credit for one thing. There was a lot of people in the organization that just did not ever really truly believe in him for various reasons, and he outlasted all of them. So good for him for getting the payday that he got.
No doubt about it. And then that leaves a huge void now in the Cowboys secondary. We've talked about this plenty. Even if they brought Jordan Lewis back, that was going to be an area that they needed to address with the status of Trayvon Diggs, Kalen Carson not being very, very promising in his rookie year. And then after that, you just have no one of note at all. So the cornerback position becomes even more of an emergency now, with Deron Bland being the only guy that you really can appreciate having as a starter in your secondary. So now what are they going to do at the nickel spot, the boundary spot? Plenty of questions there. I think Mike Hilton, as of this recording, is still available. Veteran nickel corner from the Bengals. And he's a pretty good player. I don't think he's Jordan Lewis caliber, but he's definitely solid, certainly better than what they have right now. He's a veteran guy who good in coverage, can fill in the run game as well, and then does some good blitzing off that slot corner spot as well. So that would be a guy that if I was the Cowboys, I would be trying to plug right now to fill that Jordan Lewis hole, but that certainly remains to be seen. And then the other loss is going to be Chauncey Golston, Broadus. How much of a loss is that? He remains in the division with the Giants.
Yeah, Chauncey Golston is, and with his situation, maybe a little too late on his career with the Cowboys. Kind of felt like that we were always chasing something with Chauncey Golston. His fault, maybe. Team's fault, surely. Playing at end, playing at tackle, been through a couple of different, coordinators, been through a couple of different defensive line coaches. finally played to the level of where Chauncey Golston, when you watched him play at Iowa, played very good against the run, didn't get blocked, able to make plays. That was the Chauncey Golston we saw. And I think it was a little too late. If Chauncey Golston would have, from the word go, if he would have played to this level, Chauncey Golston might have gotten an extension with the Dallas Cowboys. But it was just kind of wait, let's see. Very steady player, very a nice guy to have in the rotation. Actually played better this year as a rotational player than he has at any point. So Cowboys not ever finding a real position for him reminds me very much of with Tyron Crawford. They paid Tyron Crawford, if you remember back in the day. Was he an end? Was he a tackle? That position flexibility is something that I think got Chauncey Golston here. And, you're right. Stayed in the division. Would you have liked to have him back? Sure. But, that he was, to me, the Giants came in with a nice offer for him. Nothing that broke the bank by any means. But Dallas kind of had an idea of but there's a couple of 1-year guys that you're dealing with right now. They chose to pay Oso Digizua, who had kind of struggled, was kind of like what I call a college player, played really well for about 12 weeks. Then it came around for the bowl game, and, that's kind of it. The last month of the season, Osa wasn't always great, but he was great this year. So they chose to pay Osa, and I think a lot of it had to do with Matt Eberflus coming in and realizing the importance of having a 3 technique. But Chauncey Golston will have to be replaced, and there's clearly some options. I know in the draft, I was looking at my board last night. I've got like 100 and almost 60 names on my draft board. Feel like 25 of them are edge rushers that offer various types of play. For example, I watched a kid just last night from BYU, Tyler Batty, and kind of a similar play the run really, really well, don't get blocked, kind of a 5 technique head up guy. That's kind of what Chauncey Golston was, kind of a 5 technique head up guy. So there are players in this draft that can replace what you got for Chauncey Golston.
Well, anytime you get a chance to bring a baddie to town, you got to capitalize on that.
Anytime you get a baddie, you're in good shape.
All right, you're listening to the Love of the Star podcast. Love of the Star is an Odyssey podcast, and you can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, Broadus, let's turn our attention to the acquisitions that the Cowboys have made. We mentioned they lose Jordan Lewis, they lose Chauncey Golston. They also obviously lost Zach Martin and Chuma Adoga. Those are really the losses there. But then they go ahead and on day one, they wait till late in the day, and then they agree to a 1-year, $3 million deal with Broncos running back Javonte Williams.
Yeah.
So I guess that means Rico is going to end up elsewhere. As of us recording this, he is not signed anywhere yet, but he will certainly command more than what the Cowboys had to give up for Javonte Williams. 1 year, $3 million. What do you see with this guy?
Yeah, with Williams, there's coming out of college. I know on my board of my stack, I believe I had him at player 44. When I talk about my stack from 1 to 150, he was player 42 on my board. Really liked him coming out of North Carolina, an explosive player. Kind of been dealing with some injuries and stuff like that. But where he, Denver, I didn't think ran the ball particularly well. When I watched the tape, it seemed like as a team they were struggling to run the football. And, Sean Payton's got to clearly look at that going forward for the Broncos. But the thing with Williams, though, is I think he's a straight line runner. And I mean, straight line is not much wiggle to his game. Hand him the ball, let him find the hole, go forward. That's, there's some power to his game. Where he could really, really help you is catching the football. He is exceptional out of the backfield catching the football. Whether you put him, swing it to him, wheel it to him, throw it underneath to him, screen it to him. He is exceptional at catching the football, and that's a real strength. And another area he's very, very good at is as a blitz pickup guy or as an extra pass protector. He seems to have a really good understanding of where to fit, where he needs to be, whether he's a chip guy, a help guy. He doesn't get in the way of the blockers. Sometimes you worry about guys, these running backs, they get in the way of the blockers, the tackle, excuse me, and then all of a sudden they miss the guy because they're both kind of get knocked around a little bit. But see, this is where I think that he could really, really help the team in those two areas. Short yardage toughness, but also, though, his ability to catch the football and be a blitz pickup guy. So in that regard, that's kind of what you're going to get with this player.
Yeah, the metrics, I mean, he's not the type of guy you really want to be handing the ball off to very often, but it sounds like a third down back on the super cheap. They're hoping that an additional season removed from knee injuries can help him to get back to a little bit more of his explosive nature. We know Shoddy likes to throw to the running backs in the passing game. And obviously extreme value when you can be a guy that can be a good pass protector at the running back position. So in no way do you want him to be your starter. And in no way do you want to be handing the ball off to this guy more than, I guess, a couple of times per game. But as a third down back, I think there's going to be some quality there.
I wonder what that means for Hunter Lipke. Hunter Lipke was kind of getting into that role of being the guy they brought in for a bigger body for the blitz pickup. Didn't really throw him the ball a ton. But I wonder if they have a different idea for what they want to do with Hunter Lipke. With this new staff.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And what are they going to do from just a bell cow standpoint? Because Javonte Williams is not that.
No, he's not that at all. I was thinking because Hunter Lipke was taking some third down role work, so I wonder if they just don't see Hunter Lipke as a third down guy anymore. That's kind of where I was going there. But you're absolutely right. They're going to have to address this through the draft, and the draft will give you the opportunity to pair him with somebody that has more explosiveness, more yards per carry, more elusiveness, those types of things.
Yeah, you still need a true starter at the position because, I mean, when you go through all these acquisitions, all of these guys are pretty much backup type players. They're rotational role type players, and it starts there with Javonte Williams. So looking forward to seeing how the Cowboys address the starting running back role once we get into the draft. But then Broadus, they go and agree to a deal with former Dolphins offensive lineman. He's kind of a swing guard, but he spent all of last season playing right guard. He's Robert Jones, 1 year, $4.5 million. What do you see with this player?
Yeah, with Robert Jones, and now you have to kind of compare, is Robert Jones an upgrade over Brock Hoffman and TJ Bass? I think there's a lot of similarities with these three players particularly. I think you kind of get a little bit of that physicality with these guys. The thing that I don't understand with Jones is he's a 334-pound guy, and he's got really good length inside. And I mean length with the arm length. To be able to keep rushers off his body, it's a problem for him. For somebody that's that plays with an element of physicality, he's not this guy that can hold off these rushers. And when he gets in trouble, his feet stop. And when his feet stop, then he doesn't use his length to be able to keep that guy across from him at bay. And it's an interesting signing from the fact that I don't see if Dallas is into running the zone schemes and stuff like that, great. That fine for this guy. But if you're talking about pin and pull, second level blocks, pulling guys and stuff, this is an odd fit. This is a really odd fit for this guy. And so I feel like you've kind of signed the same guy. What you got is a guy, as you mentioned, it's got some flexibility. I've seen him play on the left side. You're like, hey, Brian, I follow the Dolphins. You've told me this. He's played some right side stuff. And, I've only seen him on the left side. So I was kind of curious. I'm like, is this guy always, sometimes when you have to play one or the other, it can mess you up. We've talked about like guys like even on this team, the guys like a Brock Hoffman or TJ Bass. Oh, he's better on the left side than he is on the right side. You don't want to move him, that kind of thing. So he's going to compete as the right guard here, and how they use him. Like I say, I'm a little concerned about anything to do with second level blocks, potential pin and pulls, where he's involved as the puller, and maybe even some, maybe a better player when it comes to the cutoffs, the reach blocks, when it's along the line of scrimmage. Anything that he has to extend could be a problem. So there'll be some competition there for that position, and I think he's very, very similar to what they have, and maybe the guys that are here are a little bit ahead of him. I think Jones' advantage is he has experience.
Yes, yeah, and I misspoke. He spent all of last season on the left side,
Left side, right,
for the Dolphins, but he has played on the right side in the past. So
he has,
and he dealt with some injuries last year. He played through it, but just listening to some Dolphins beat writers and stuff, they said he struggled last year because he was fighting through some injuries. So hopefully he can get better from that. And I think we all have optimism with this coaching staff. Clayton Adams, Connor Riley, we've talked about it plenty.
Right.
These guys getting the most out of their linemen, and having a track record of that. So obviously those guys see something in Robert Jones that they feel like they can get something out of. But this is definitely not a surefire Zach Martin replacement.
No, and I was just curious, and I'd love to ask somebody what the situation was with Will Hernandez. Was Will Hernandez, who was at Arizona, and was with Clayton Adams, and you wonder if where we've seen maybe Matt Eberflus and Coach White Cotton step up and say, hey, listen, this guy would be pretty good to have. It seems like are the offensive coaches not as aggressive when it comes to pointing out guys? You know what I'm saying? Maybe because I felt, and we always do this all the time in our line of work, we connect dots. But Clayton Adams got something out of Will Hernandez because he was a bust with the New York Giants. He was an absolute bust. And so you wonder, was there something that he didn't like about the player, or was the money too much? I wonder if you could have got a Will Hernandez for a similar payday than what you got with Jones.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. I'm obviously Clayton Adams, coming from the Cardinals, will have a better perspective on Will Hernandez than anyone. But
absolutely,
I was kind of hoping that would be the veteran guard that they brought in, who I
think
more of an obvious, this is a guy who's here to start, whereas Robert Jones is just another guy to throw in the mix, and maybe he unseats Hoffman or Bass, but there's definitely no guarantees on that front.
Right.
Okay, so let's get to the next acquisition for the Cowboys. We mentioned it earlier, a guy to back up Osa at the 3-tech spot and has some versatility up and down the line of scrimmage defensively. He comes from the Jets. Solomon Thomas, local legend, played at Coppell. He was the third overall pick in the draft some years ago. Hasn't lived up to that. That is for dang sure. He's certainly a quality human being, locker room presence, that kind of deal. Has the relationship with new Cowboys defensive line coach Aaron White Cotton from the Jets, as you mentioned. But you've studied him. What do you see with Solomon Thomas?
Yeah, I really like. Of all the signings so far, I really like the Solomon Thomas one, and I like it for the element of, I think you get a player that comes off the ball quickly. I think he gets, he plays on the offensive side of the line of scrimmage. You could kind of move him around. He could play tackle. He could play edge, a little bit like what you have with what you had with Chauncey Golston. I like the fact that, to me, I think you got a guy that plays the run well. He's got the quickness. He's got a little bit of a burst, the first step quickness, his ability to tackle. I think the way he chases, the effort's outstanding. If you're looking for a guy that is going to actually give Osa a break, Solomon Thomas is a really a nice get, in my opinion, just watching his tape, watching him against his division opponents, Miami, watching him against Buffalo, watching him against, other teams. I mean, he did a really, really nice job of playing, I can say, on the opponent's side of the line of scrimmage. He's one of those guys, he's extremely smart. He doesn't get fooled on plays. I like him, and I like him as a possibility with him and Osa both being on the field. in some nickel pass rush situations, maybe even working with him with Micah Parsons on some twist game stunts, which he is really, really good at.
Well, that's super encouraging. I love that you went in there, you watched the tape, and that is a much better reflection than some of the metrics. I mean, some of the metrics on him aren't overly encouraging. But you watching the film and seeing something a little bit different there. You can never have enough bodies on the defensive line, and he's a guy that has he's played plenty of snaps. He knows what he's doing. So I'm glad to hear that the film tells a better story than what some of the metrics do.
Sure does. Film's better.
And then finally here, the last acquisition to date is going to be a former Saints first-round pick, edge rusher Peyton Turner, 1 year, $3 million deal, $2 million guaranteed from the Saints. Like I said, he was a first-round pick. I know he's been injured quite a bit. He's an athletic freak, 6'5.5". He's got the longest arms you've ever seen. And I mean, just a super, super athletic guy, but the production hasn't quite been there.
No, and you know what? The athletic ability doesn't always show up with this player. You mentioned the injuries, but watching him play, and he's a guy that you have to really, really dig in on. So there was, I took my games. I said every time he's on the field for the whole season, and I just watched him snap after snap after snap. You mentioned the length. He is really good at controlling the line of scrimmage. The blockers and stuff. He is not a twitchy guy by any means. One of his best pass rushes was in the Atlanta game early in the season, where he was able to capture the corner and with his length, able to kind of reach back. Kirk Cousins was trying to slide forward in the pocket. He slapped the ball out of Kirk Cousins' hands as he's sliding forward in the pocket, all because of the length. But he's not a twitchy, win the edge guy. He's going to be more of a run player. He's going to be physical at the point of attack. He can reduce down to play some tackle if you need him to do that, and kind of give guards some problems, holding up blocks and stuff like that. But he is a much better run defender than he is a pass rusher. There's times, like I said, in the Atlanta game where it flashes at you, but this is not a get up the field, dip the shoulder, and flatten to the quarterback kind of guy. This is a play with technique, play with hands, and but the athletic ability occasionally shows up. But there's some stiffness to his game as a pass rusher, but as a run defender, I think that's where he's going to help you the most.
All right, you're listening to the Love of the Star podcast. Love of the Star is an Odyssey podcast, and you can find it wherever you get your podcasts. It is now time for the Dean Julia mailbag. We take questions from our fantastic listeners. And Tommy Reynolds wants to know, Broadus, Cowboys bring back Kevontae Turpin. Do you expect them to use him more as a wide receiver and player offensively and not just a returner?
I do. I think you and I talked about this on our show the other day on the G-Bag Nation on 105.3 The Fan, was that when you commit the amount of money they did to Turpin, that's not just as a returner. I think they're thinking about 11 personnel stuff. And they're thinking about him. There was some snaps last year where Turpin, even with his size, his limited lack of height, where he was playing on the outside and catching balls down the field. If you still want to do stuff with CD, put him in the slot, move him around. But I think that this coaching staff is probably looking at him as an 11 personnel. That 11 personnel, we talk about that. That's the 3 wide receiver package that they'll use. And I think that he clearly is a guy that is going to see more of that type of work.
Yeah, I was encouraged with some of the stuff that they started to implement with him last year. I mean, they put him in the backfield, I formation, and he's cranking out chunk runs. That is the guy. They've left a lot of meat on the bone with Kevontae Turpin. Kind of reminds you of Tony Pollard for all those years before they finally used him. And so hopefully Brian Schottenheimer and this offensive staff, Clayton Adams and company, have a better vision for how to get the most out of Kevontae Turpin, because especially as it stands right now, I mean, there's no question he's your most explosive player. He's your most explosive player on your offense. So you got to find ways to get the ball in his hands, even if it's the quick passing game, swing passes, screen passes, stuff like that, to where his speed, you see teams like the Chiefs do it all the time. It's just, hey, we can throw the ball to Rashee Rice at the line of scrimmage and he can go get 10 yards. Yeah. And Kevontae Turpin is the exact same way. He can go steal first downs and I think he's a guy you want touching the ball 8 times a game.
I totally agree. Yeah, I think they paid him to be more than just a returner. I think the assessment you just gave is absolutely correct.
Okay, so let's get into some of these prospects. Broadus, I know you are loaded up on draft stuff right now. Oswaldo Quinones is asking for you to rank these 4 players: Jalen Walker, Georgia, linebacker / edge rusher; Jihad Campbell, linebacker from Alabama; Shamar Stewart, edge from Texas A&M.
Saying it right.
And then Michael Williams, edge from Georgia. So 4 front 7 players on the defense. Cowboys obviously have needs there. How would you go about stacking those guys?
Walker, Campbell, Williams, Stewart is how I would do that for him. I think that Walker, the more that I talk to people about Walker, he fits in that people believe around the league, my scout buddies, and I do agree with them, that they feel like that Walker needs to be a linebacker, an inside linebacker. Use him like what you would do with Micah. If you play him as a true edge at his size, he's probably going to get wore down on you. So make him a linebacker. Let him be an athlete. Let him be a situational rusher. Don't play him as edge and make him fight tackle blocks all day long. So that's kind of where I would with him. Campbell is an outstanding linebacker from Alabama. The physicality, the size, the movement, all these things. He plays really well in the passing game. I like him a lot. I think I got Walker above him because he has that pass rush ability. Williams is a guy that is really, really good against the run. He needs to develop a little bit more as a pass rusher. I think there's times where he doesn't use all his ability in that way. But when he can get it going, he could be really, really, really tough to deal with. And then Stewart, I've had a lot of problems with these A&M kids, Scorton, Stewart. Where are they? Are they pass rushers? Are they 5 techniques? Are they big? It was kind of crazy watching these guys play. But Stewart has a lot of talent. But in the group that you gave me, I would have him 4th as an edge. Walker, Campbell, Williams, and Stewart would have them.
The production from a sack standpoint is just not there with Stewart. From A&M, but the
same things with the Williamses too as well. It's kind of it's a really a weird dynamic for those guys.
I did see with Shamar Stewart. I mean, the athleticism obviously is insane. Like
off the charts.
His RAS score is number 1, a 10 out of 10 out of almost 1,900 defensive ends going back to the year 1987. So some team is going to look at that and be like, hey, we can mold this guy into a premier edge type player, but that's the risk you take. I did see like his pressure numbers were pretty solid at A&M. He's just not a finisher, at least at this point.
No, that's the thing about it is, and I always reminded of back in the 90s, there was a player named Mike Mamula from Boston College that just tore up the combine and was picked 7th overall and had just a good career. Nothing like his workout numbers turned out to be. You got to make sure that the workout numbers and the tape match. I'll give you an example, a guy like Matthew Golden from Texas, the wide receiver. Speed, you could see it. When you watch tape, you got to make sure that these workout numbers are the same. You see it in the tape. And I think with Stewart, sometimes you don't always see that kind of that 10 athlete that we're talking about here now.
Okay, we have a question from Matt Holleran. These are 3 different draft scenarios. Choose your own destiny.
Got it.
Okay, so your first option is in round 1, you get Tet McMillan.
Okay.
In round 2, you get Trey Amos.
That's the corner from Ole Miss.
And in the 3rd round, you get Texas running back Jaden Blue.
Yeah, he's might not be an every down guy, but as far as the receiving, the explosiveness, outstanding. Okay.
Okay, so that is number
Group one. Okay, got
Group 2, you have Josh Simmons in round 1, tackle from Ohio State.
I think he's the best tackle in the best tackle in the draft. Yeah.
You have in round 2 Iowa running back Caleb Johnson.
Okay, like him a lot.
And then in round 3 you get the linebacker Chris Paul Jr.
Okay, a little early. I have him in the 4th. Okay, got those 3. Is there another one?
Yeah. And then the final one is round 1. You get Texas corner Jahdae Barron.
Ooh. Okay.
In round 2, you get the wide receiver Jaden Higgins.
Okay, I have him a lot lower than that. He's kind of a slow guy, but he's really good going up and getting the ball.
And then in the 3rd round, you get Jordan Birch, edge player.
Okay, I love Barron in that group. I don't like the other 2 as much. I know Higgins ran at the combine, timed a little bit better, but the play speed when you watch him, but he's a good player. I'm going to eliminate group 3. Group 2 is the one that's more consistent to me. Group 1, because I have a first-round grade on McMillan, I have a second-round grade on Amos, and I also have a second-round grade on, a third-round grade on Blue. So that first group is more consistent to how I see it. I have a first-round grade on Simmons. I have a second-round grade on Johnson, the running back. But I think when you start to talk about Ginty, Johnson, Hampton, Henderson, that's a second round, but I have a 4th round grade on Paul. If he would have put a different linebacker in there for me, say he picks, say he puts Swearinger in there from UCLA. I don't know. I think Swearinger might go in the 3rd, but if he would have put Swearinger in the 3rd instead of Paul, I might have picked that group, but I think I'm going to go with group 1.
Okay, group 1. So you get the big receiver from Arizona, Tet McMillan. You get the Ole Miss corner, Trey Amos, and then you get the Texas running back, Jaden Blue.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, wide receiver definitely going to be a big need here.
Amos is a press man corner. I mean, you watch him walk up. He's got the length. He's got the size. He's got the quickness. He plays engaged with the receiver. So yeah, there's a lot to like about him. But that group is more consistent to where I have all those guys.
Right.
Like I said, if you would have put a different linebacker in there, like say Swearinger from UCLA, I might have gone Simmons the tackle, Johnson the running back, and Swearinger the linebacker. That might have been a better group for me, but I'll go with the first group there.
It's interesting though with Jaden Blue because he seems like he's not your every down back. He's your change of pace, third down pass catcher back, and you just got that with Javonte Williams to some extent. So is that the type of running back you want to go for now?
Yeah, I'm not married to that runner that I signed. I'm just not. I mean, I think the biggest problem that Blue has is that he's had some issues with some fumbles early on. And so, but I look at that group that he's with, like I say, to me, the runner that I signed, I could easily move on from that if I could find another guy. But I just think in the 3rd round, the talent, when Kyle Yeomans asked me, Brian, who's the best player on your board in the 3rd round? Blue's going to be one of those guys.
Okay, then we have a question from Matt Holdridge. He's asking, would you be in on a potential Cooper Kupp and Von Miller addition to keep you from maybe having to draft those positions in round 1? Cooper Kupp, Von Miller.
I might be dead balls wrong about this, but talking to some folks with the team, I don't think there's a real interest in Cooper Kupp.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a bummer because I do think he would be a nice complement. Wide receiver 2. He doesn't separate versus man coverage anymore, but CeeDee Lamb is going to command the attention. He's a guy that, I mean, Shoddy keeps talking about cut splits, and he's a guy that is used to doing that with McVay. Yeah. He's a heck of a blocker when it comes to being somebody who can help you out in the run game as well. So that would be an addition that I would like, but I'm sure a team will give him more money than the Cowboys are interested in giving.
Yeah, I just didn't get the feeling talking last night to a couple of people. I was asking, is there a scenario where you would like to have Cooper Kupp? And it didn't seem very much like it was, yeah, absolutely. Now they might be playing with me here on this, but this is some people that are usually really, really honest with me about when I ask them about players and things. They're like, I don't think the interest is really there. Maybe they think it's going to be too much, like you said, for what they're willing to do.
And then Von Miller, obviously that would be bringing back a hometown guy, played at DeSoto, played at A&M. He got cut from the Bills, so he wouldn't affect any of your compensatory picks in the future by signing him. Same with Cooper Kupp, because he's going to end up being cut as well. But Von Miller, I mean, on the cheap as just a pass rush specialist, third down type player, I would be open to it. I don't know if the Cowboys are.
Yeah, again, that might be one of those things. What's the price of doing that? If you gave me a choice between one or the other, I would take Cooper Kupp over Von Miller.
Me too.
But I would. But as you painted a picture of me to me, like I say, I don't know what the money situation is for Von Miller. I'd like to go back and see Von Miller play and kind of get an idea of what you have there. But like I say, Cooper Kupp would be the one that more interesting to me. I just don't know if the team is really interested.
And then our buddy Travis F. is asking about if there's any rumblings about the Cowboys' interest in Bears linebacker Jack Sanborn.
I haven't heard. Yeah, I haven't heard any. To be honest with you, I'm sorry, I have not asked about that player.
Yeah, he's definitely not a household name by any stretch, but he's a solid, classic run stopping linebacker. He's aggressive. I don't know how good he is in the passing game, but he would be an upgrade for the Cowboys right now, and he's got the familiarity with Eberflus, so maybe that's a good thing, or maybe that's working against him, and Eberflus is like, that's not a guy.
Yeah, I have not heard anybody mention his name, so maybe Matt's waiting for his money to go down on him and see if they can work a deal there, but I have not heard anything on him.
All right, well, that's it for today's Dean Julia mailbag. Thank you to all the listeners that sent some questions, and we look forward to getting back after those on the next episode of the Love of the Star podcast that will come later on this week with Brian Broaddus and Zach Wolchuk. Broaddus, thanks so much. And,
thank you, Eric.
Be well.
You too, sir.